People say there is a first time for everything. A first kiss, your first car, the unrequited first love. However, what does this mean in the grand scope of things? Are firsts more monumental because they are the first, or do we get better with practice? Do we remember our firsts as more important than they actually were, holding on to that magical moment as a mark of our past and future selves? Do our firsts outshine what comes next? On A First Time for Everything, we will explore with our guests their firsts and how those impacted the seconds, thirds, and even countless times after. Is the first the best or merely the beginning? Or worse, was the first the last because it was so bad? We will dig into the recesses of our memories and consider whether or not a first was the start of something amazing or something we'd rather not remember. Come along with me, Juliet Rose, as I put our guests in the hot seat to analyze their firsts and how they defined who they became. I promise you're in for a fun, although maybe bumpy ride. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to A First Time for Everything. This is Juliet Rose. I am your host. I am also an author, editor, and publisher, and a host of the show. Just a reminder, too, for anybody tuning in to give us a like. And at the end of the season, we do a prize drawing packet. So get your name in there for a chance to win that. And tonight we are speaking with Tricia Copeland. And Tricia, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hi, right. Tricia Copeland, author of more than 20 titles now. I write fiction novels, the first of which you see on your screen is This Me, started the Being Me series, which is a fictionalized account of my experience with anorexia and overcoming anorexia. So that really catapulted my author career. And from then on, I haven't or can't stop writing. So your intro was really interesting to me because it definitely put me on this indie author publishing path that I just amazingly love.
That's awesome. And do you have like a website or a place where people can find your books?
I do. TriciaCopeland.com is my website, and you can go there and find 2 free short stories if you'd like to sign up for my newsletter. So that's a great way to get introduced to me. I'm also as author Tricia Copeland or Tricia Copeland author on all the major things. And I also host a podcast that you can find Finding the Magic Book podcast, where I talk about books and authors. So you can find that as well.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's kind of, since we're first time for everything, let's kind of go back to the beginning and talk about a few firsts. So did you always know that you wanted to be a writer?
No, I may be the only writer that did not like writing for a very long portion of my life, probably until I was like 25 or 26 did I learn. And that was really only technical writing. I was getting my master's degree, and my professor, my mentor, helped me like learn to write technical writing. And from then on, I really liked that process of, and obviously it was technical scientific writing. It was just summarizing what, I learned or what my research was on. But I finally got grammar, and I finally understood like how to tell that story. I mean, you were still telling the story. You were saying, okay, this is the problem, and this is what we asked to find out the answer to a problem, and this is what the conclusion was. So I learned how to tell stories that way, which a little more dry than normal stories, right? But then when I kind of had a lull in my career, I was staying home with my kids, and I was 38. It was one of those monumental times. You're coming up to 40 and you're looking back on your life. And I thought, I'm bored. What am I going to do? And I just started writing this story of, it was me, but it wasn't me. A girl who develops anorexia and how she got into that and how she couldn't get out of that, but then how eventually she found recovery. So that really launched that fiction part of my brain where I never really considered myself to be a creative person before that point.
Yeah, that's interesting. I talk a little bit about the show. Like I originally started out writing nonfiction as well as more journalism and switched to fiction. Did you find switching from technical writing to fiction to be a challenge, or what were some of the challenges, I guess, in resetting your brain towards fiction?
Well, I didn't like take any classes before I started writing the story. So really it was how it played, how I was seeing it in my head is how I was writing on the paper. So it really read more like a screenplay. Like it was very dialogue heavy. And I didn't know how to, you know, put things in that weren't dialogue or movement, basically. Like I didn't know how to summarize some dialogue to tell people what was happening. So my first manuscript was like 180,000 words, and my editor was like, okay, well, we have a big job to do here. And that took me like 7 years to write. And it ended up being my first 2 books of this Being Me series, Is This Me? And If I Could Fly. So we split it into 2 books. We condensed it down. I think the 2 books together were like 160, 80, about 80K each. So condensed them down and made them, you know, more story-wise into where each book had a plot, which I didn't, you know, I'm sure I took that somewhere in high school, but I had none of that in college. And it was way in the back of my brain. So, you know, I had to learn what a plot was, what you did for character development, the highs and the lows, and your climax, and your intro, and your whatever you call it at the end.
Yeah.
Not your conclusion, but your wrap up, or
sure. Yeah.
So I kind of, and so after that, I started taking more like creative writing classes and learning more about character development and setting and different parts of the book and how you needed to, you know, have the highs and the lows and what you needed to do for pacing in a story so people like would keep reading it and not give up.
Yeah. And that's really valid. I think a lot of people, especially if you're coming from a different writing style, you know, like that, you came from technical, I came from journalism, like it's different. You know, writing a fiction book is completely different. And yeah, my stuff tends to read a little bit like I had the same thing with like screenplays, a lot of dialogue, you know, like action, but yeah, to add in those elements. So when you first wrote this and you said you split it into more than one book, you sent it to an editor and their feedback was what?
Their feedback was, wow, you have a lot of dialogue. And wow, number 2, we need to split this into 2 books. And so that was okay with me, though. Yeah. I was at the point where I was just learning. Like, I think I was ready for that. Like, a lot of times in my life, I've been very not good with taking constructive criticism and just hadn't liked it in the past, but I was just open. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, tell me what to do. I'll do it. And it was a good experience. I mean, the editor happened to be one of my best friends. So maybe that helps, you know, a spoonful of sugar or something like that. There were still points where they would point out things and I was like, dang, that hurts my feelings. But you have to get that tough skin and realize that they're just helping you make your book better. And it's interesting because I was even looking at that intro, and the first time I got my mountain bike and rode my mountain bike, I fell and it had a pretty big accident and it had like all this road rash on it. And I was like, oh, this is like a great intro for me to have a bicycle. So it was a little bit like that writing my book. I had to fall down and get some scrapes and, you know, pick myself back up and keep going.
Yeah. And I kind of like that analogy because I think that there is this aspect of like, we do fall when we're first doing it, but we like, that's the thing, right? You get back on the bicycle. So you do that. And I think with writing, that is the thing, is being able to say, okay, yeah, I got this. Let me get back on and try again, and not taking it personally. Because I think there are people that do take it personally. Like, no, I'm just amazing and you don't agree with me. And it's really important to not take it personally and just say, okay, they're trying to help me be better.
Right.
Yeah. So you have, Is This Me was your first book. When did this come out?
In 2015. So 10 years.
10 years. And in 10 years, you've written over 20, you said?
23. I published my 23rd book this year. Yes.
Nice.
I got obsessed. I loved writing. I loved the process. I love telling stories and creating new stories. And yeah, I was publishing 3 years a book there for a while. So it was pretty intense.
Yeah. Yeah. So having this first book out, 10 years ago, and then say putting your 23rd book out now, what would you really say is the difference between putting this last book out for you personally as a writer and then that first book? What were really some of like those kind of life lessons or things that you've learned since that point?
I'm I'm a better writer now.
Yes.
My editor doesn't have to do as much with me on the back end. Still does have issues and problems. Obviously, grammar is not my forte at all, but better at story writing. I'm better at planning things. It doesn't take me as long to write a book as 8 years.
Yeah.
And I'm just a better planner and a better plotter. So I know in the beginning, okay, this is the beginning of my book. This is the end. I know, the point where the hero or the person's going to make the decision and a couple of highs and lows, what the climax is going to be and how I'm going to wrap this up. So I have usually that better plan in mind than just like write totally pantsing it. I don't totally pants it anymore. And, knowing like what values and what themes I want in the book and thinking about how I want to show those themes and how I can show those values of the characters and how I can highlight certain aspects of the characters that I really want to highlight. What challenges I'm going to put in front of them that really show whatever I'm trying to show in the story.
Yeah. And is this all a series or do you have like multiple series or like standalones or what do you write?
I do. So the Being Me series, which started with Is This Me, is a 4-book series. It was funny because when I say pimping out to an agent, but I queried to get an agent. And the most thing that came back to me, Harlequin, was like, well, we want this to be one book. And I was like, you could make this one book, but to try to explain and show like how you become anorexic to someone did not seem like one book to me. And that's really why I ended up in indie publishing, because I was like, this is really unique. And I wanted to do it my way. So anyway, yes, so that was my first series, the Being Me series, the 4-book series. I did have a secondary character that got their own, I guess, spin-off, which is The Deepest Scars after that. And then I jumped into young adult fantasy, which is, I love vampires, witches, all of those things. And YA fantasy is my reading love. So jumped into that very quickly. I have the Kingdom Journals, which is also a 5-book series, and a crossover series. My latest series is the Realm Chronicles series. Those are both YA series, witches and fairies. And then I have every in between those, when I get too stressed out with having to put all those characters in peril, I write a romance, which is now pinned under Maria Jane, which is the Perfect Romance series. And I'll be publishing the 5th book in that series next June.
Wow.
So that is,
wow. Yeah. Is this all YA or do you kind of go to adults as well?
The romances are adult. So they're closed door fade to black romances. So the spice level is like, I think a 2 on the TikTok scale, which I was kind of disappointed in. I was like, 2.5, maybe. I don't know. But TikTok's is a pretty spicy scale. So so closed door fade to black romance, but in that like 20s, they're all past college age. So 22 to early 30s-ish are the characters.
Kind of like that new adult area. Yeah. I read a little bit of that as well. And I like that because it gives you a little more leeway, which is nice. So you talked about when you wrote Is This Me? And you talked about it dealing with anorexia and that it's not you, but that you have some personal experience with that. And what was really kind of your driving factor for writing that? And what do you hope that people will take away from it?
Right. Well, I really wanted to, anorexia is such a hard thing to understand, and it really doesn't make sense. And it really doesn't even make sense to me now. I'm like, yeah, that was pretty stupid, but it's not anything, it's
right.
A psychiatric disease and psychiatric disorder and something that I could not get myself out of. So really, I wanted to show a little bit explaining how this happens and how someone thinks when they're in it. So I think that piece of it helps people around the person suffering understand it better, but also show the recovery and show the hope and show that, because I very much felt like my life, even newly getting into recovery and helping myself, I felt like my life, when you're so young, you feel like your life is over. Like, I made this huge mistake. How could I derail my life this way? That was so stupid of me. What was I thinking? Why didn't I just do better? Of course, an anorexic wants to do everything perfectly, right? So why didn't you do better? Why didn't you not do this? Which obviously is not healthy either. But anyway, it was just like, I felt like my life was over. And it was just a pivot point. And I would say I learned so much in my recovery that I had so many more skills moving forward and growing up that maybe I would have gotten them some way, but it was a crash course, life skills.
Yeah. What kind of feedback have you gotten on it? I mean, it's obviously been out for a while now. What kind of feedback have you gotten on that?
Right. Yes. I mean, and I feel like even though it deals with anorexia, it could really apply to any eating disorder, any addiction, any mental health issue, depression that somebody is going through that's very intense and that really derails their life. So I've had, a lot of emails, a lot of people just reaching out and saying thank you and how much they could relate to the story. But it's also a love story. There's love, romance elements in that, because it does show 4 years of this character's life from freshman year in college to a senior in college.
Okay.
And so, meeting the guy, a love triangle, issues with her family, a very dramatic, what will I say? Very dramatic third book. I'll say that. I don't want to give too much away. And then, really showing that recovery piece and how she comes out and is happy having her, well, happily for now, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Now, I write a little bit dealing with addiction is the thing. But one thing I've always recognized is that, recovery isn't like, it's not like remission, it doesn't go away. So like when you're in that, there's always this element that you have to continue addressing that. When you wrap the series out, how did you handle like kind of that element that, you're never totally healed. It's always a work in progress.
Right. I show her about 6 months later. And they're going to an event and she's definitely thinking about and planning out, okay, well, I need to make sure that I'm eating what I'm supposed to be eating here, because definitely 6 months out from recovery from anorexia, you're still on an eating plan and reminding yourself that you eat 3 meals a day, no matter what. And if you're feeling emotional or whatever, you still do that eating. And then you talk about your feelings, just like you would if you were an alcoholic or drug addict. You would call your sponsor and say, okay, sponsor, I'm feeling like this and I'm not going to drink today. You call your sponsor and you say, okay, I'm feeling like this and I'm still going to eat what's healthy for me. So I do show that element there a little bit. And that's just a little bit of a nod to that. I don't go a lot into the particulars, but a nod to the future and kind of how the self-care involved in that.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, that's really impressive. And I think it's really important to write in that way and to kind of handle some of those topics, because especially so many teen girls I starved myself and I never threw up, but I definitely never ate. And back then, this was in the 80s, I took a lot of like the diet pills, they did, because I was always trying to hit that point. And then later in years, I was able to look back and see a lot of it had to do with trauma. So like, do you address trauma in that as well?
I do, yes. So she has some issues with her family. Her dad was in the military. He's very overbearing and strict with her and her sister as well. So we have that coming into play. She is attacked, like it's a random attack on college campus. It's not sexual attack, but she is attacked by a random person. So she has that trauma coming in there as well. So a myriad of factors. I mean, it's really the trauma that happens on the college campus that kind of, she was already heading that way because she had a boyfriend that was moving away. She had a father that didn't approve of the boyfriend. And so she was already having issues, and this compounded it. And she just spins out. Oh, my light just went off.
Yeah, that happens.
And she spins out of control. And so that really sends her into the depression and the tailspin of, okay, she's going to deal with this depression and not feeling happy with medicating, with exercising, and the high you get from the exercise, and just like a drug, chemical reaction that happens in your brain,
being able to control
the control.
I totally know. So so moving on to your next books, do you address similar type topics, or do you address any type of like more, I guess, reality-based topics in those as well?
Some of them are, yes. So my Kingdom Journal series, the initial thought was that was supposed to be a vampire series, because vampires are my favorite characters, and it completely went sideways and it became more of a witch series. So we have a trinity of witches who have to break a curse on the witch lines. And my first character idea was a vampire witch hybrid. And she lives in our contemporary world, but she has to also go to human high school. So, and her being a witch vampire hybrid is forbidden. So her mother is a vampire and nobody can know that she's half witch, right? So she not only has to hide the fact that she's a witch, she has to go to human high school and hide the fact that she's also a vampire.
Right.
So she has this, where do I fit in? She has a mentor that is a witch, so she has a little bit of that influence, but she doesn't know where she fits in. She doesn't know what path she's going to take. So there's some elements that people will relate to, especially high schoolers, will relate to in that coming of age type setting where I don't know, I'm just this person that I don't know if I fit in with anyone. So I have a lot of those issues that come in with my fairies. And I say it's a crossover series. The Realm Chronicles to the Kingdom Journals are crossover series. So my fairies come help the witches and the witches come help the fairies, and they have a mutual antagonist. So that's why it kind of both characters carry over into both series. But the fairies live below our bedrock in our contemporary time, but we don't know they're there. But they still live in medieval times. So they don't have electricity or computers or anything like that, but they've been very isolated. Like they don't interact with humans. They don't interact. They believe that the vampires come from evil, right? And they're not supposed to associate with the vampires, and witches are the good people, but they usually don't associate with them either. So they have all these ideas about who's good and who's bad and who we associate with and who we don't associate this. And then our young queen Titania comes, yeah. she comes along and she's like, wait, but these witches are good, even though there's a witch vampire hybrid, and they're good and they're helping us. So I think we need to work with them. And all the other fae are like, no, we can't do this. So those are aspects of that come into play a lot of, breaking the norm and deciding to make different choices than maybe generations past.
Yeah. And so that's, which series is that?
The Realm Chronicles series.
Okay, so you have the Me series, the Realm Chronicles series. Do you have another series?
Yes. So what came first was the Kingdom Journals, which is the Witches series. And why it's called Kingdom Journals is because each book is told by a different witch. So you get their backstory as well as the continuing overall arc of the series. And then jump off from the Kingdom Journals is the Realm Chronicles, which is the Fae series. And then the romance series, which kind of gets interspersed in there, is the Perfect Romance series.
Okay. And are they shared worlds? Or are they all different kind of universes?
So Kingdom Journals and the Realm Chronicles is a shared world.
Okay.
Yeah, so like that. So they're a crossover series, and my witches help the fairies and the fairies help the witches.
Nice. And are these complete series now, or are you still working on them?
Yes. So I just finished the Realm Chronicles series. So with the crossover, it's basically a 10-book series that you can read. So
okay,
that was very exciting. I published my last book, To Be a Fae, in July.
So they all the series are done now?
Right.
So what's next?
Oh, well, my Perfect Romance series is not really a open close. It's still an open series. Like we're still meeting new characters in that series, because the premise is that there was a group of friends from college, the University of Kentucky, that you see each character spread their wings and go find their happily ever afters, not only with romance, but also with like their job choices and career choices and what they wanted to do. So that is kind of an open-ended series. And that's fun to like create those new characters and tell the new characters' stories. But yes, I'm definitely looking for my next fantasy novel.
And do you ever do standalones, or are they always a series?
So far, everything. Well, I do have one standalone, Draft of Sunshine, which is a YA paranormal story that was actually my first paranormal story. It's just I guess it's a short novel. It's a 60,000 word novel. And so that was a standalone, but I wrote it in an anthology. It was I put it in an anthology, and so I can't make anything else out of it, sadly, because I love that story too. But I feel like every time I have this idea, like I can't let the characters go. So I keep creating new worlds and new challenges for them.
Yeah, you get really attached. They kind of become like family.
They do.
Well, one of the things that I find interesting, and you do write both adult and YA, and I work in a library, so I get kind of the experience of seeing what people check out, and I'm seeing a lot of adults really drawn to YA. And are you finding that with your market for your YA stuff, is that you're getting a lot of adult readers as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm getting young readers. I hope that I am, but there's no way for me to tell if an adult is buying the book for the child or the child is buying the book, if the teens are buying the book. So, yeah, but like my mother-in-law is 80 years old now, and her favorite series is the Fae series. She's like, I never thought I would read fairies, but it's my favorite one. So I think, yeah, a lot of people are just drawn to that subject matter that's not as gritty or grisly. People do die, but it's not as graphic. So sure. I think, I YA fantasy is my favorite genre. So
yeah, I mean, I'm just
judge anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I see the trend that way, and I find it interesting. And I'm still drawn. I tend to pick up a lot of YA books because I also feel like they're brave. I don't know how else to put that. There's like a braveness in YA that I don't necessarily always see in adult fiction. Like they're willing to kind of tackle things a different way. And I really enjoy that. So I think that it's funny because we think of YA, but really, I think it has shifted so much that really is a genre, but it's not only appealing to young adults, it's appealing to everybody.
Right. I think there's something about being young and you can make any choice and your mind doesn't think of all the limitations first. Whereas when you're an adult, you're like, wait a minute, this could happen or this could happen.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe we like to tap into like nostalgia too, like go back to that time. So yeah. So if you had a new writer come to you and they were asking your advice, because I said you're only indie, right? Like you didn't go traditional or hybrid, you're indie, correct?
Right, yeah.
So if a new writer came to you and say they write within that same realm, maybe you meet them at a conference and they say that you've written 23 books and they love your series and they ask you for advice on, how to move forward. Maybe they have a manuscript, they're working on it. What is your best advice for somebody starting out?
It really depends on their goals because I host a podcast. I talk to so many authors that are like A-list published authors with Penguin and a lot of these publishing companies, all the way down to indie published authors like myself, small presses. And when I talk to those big published authors, it took them 2 to 3 years to get an agent and maybe another couple of years to get the right publisher. And their books are very successful. So I don't want to dissuade anyone from doing that. Part of me is like, oh, why didn't you do that? And I'm like, oh, well, I remember I did query first, which is not very long. Like if you have your goals, be patient, stick with it, believe in your book. I talked to author had several rewrites and just, and talk to different people about how to make their book better over a span of 2 or 3 years and then to get picked up on that better book, right? So I think it really has to do with your patience level, how much control you want, and just your personality type, maybe. Being an indie author isn't for everyone. It definitely hasn't gotten me a full-time career. I still have my second job. And, it depends on your skills, how much you want to learn about all of that, how much, I've taken a lot of marketing courses and I kind of think that's fun too, though. So it's like this whole other second hobby that I have. Yeah,
marketing is definitely I mean, it's just as much time as writing or anything else is marketing. What are some of your marketing tips? There's so many failed marketing tips out there. You see, go to YouTube and say marketing and they terrible ideas or whatever. So what are some of your kind of go-to marketing tips that you use?
I think just being consistent on whatever you're doing. I was trying to do everything in the beginning and then really realized that I couldn't do I don't have enough bandwidth to do everything. So, I'll do, and you say everything. And so I want to build my newsletter, right? Those are people I know that are going to get my email and they're going to sign up for my newsletter and hopefully they're going to keep following me, right? So because like social media, like my friend, like they took down all of her accounts, like they took them away and she can't get them back and she didn't do anything wrong. So that could be gone, right? Like, I think Facebook and Instagram are the hardest on that, but yeah, they were gone.
Wow.
And so what do you do then, right? If Facebook and Instagram are all you have and that is gone, then so I do like stress my newsletter and staying in touch with my newsletter people, and all those people email me back, which is super fun to have those relationships. And that's where I get like my beta readers and my ARC readers and all of those wonderful people. And so that's great. I mean, having a good website is the foundation, you know, and do what you love too. Like if you like making videos, make videos of yourself.
And if you don't,
love it, but I definitely do get more views. So I have, you know, I try to do it as much as I can. And yeah, I think you just be consistent on whatever you're doing is probably the best thing to say.
Yeah. And do you TikTok?
You know, I go in and out of TikTok. Like I'll be like, oh, I can do this. I can do these videos, and I'll do them for like a month, and then I like lose all my.
Me too.
Energy.
Yes.
So as an introverted person, it's, I mean, even just doing a Canva video that's not even me in the video still is like, seems really time intensive versus just a single image. So I should do it better. And maybe I should focus on that. I don't know. I can't. Anyway, yeah.
I can relate. That's where I struggle too, is the videos. It's funny because I did TikTok, like I was like, okay, I need to do this. And so once a week I would do a reading and stuff. And then like, I remember somebody commented and like, I was nervous. Like, I hate doing it. And someone says, why does she look like an NPC? You know, I just started laughing. I was like, okay, maybe this isn't my thing. You know? Like in person, I'm great. I'm totally comfortable here. But somehow sitting in front of the computer screen with myself was just the most awkward, uncomfortable thing. And it showed.
Yes, I feel like that too. And like the screenshots of you, they just look bad. And
yeah, you know, marketing is such a challenge. And I do touch on that. I try to touch on that in every show because I think a lot of people, you know, they put out that first book and maybe the book's great. And maybe they did all the right stuff. They got the editor, the cover's great, but then they don't realize like how important marketing is. And some people are natural at it. Some people just get marketing and some people don't. And I think finding, like you said, what works for you, because as soon as it doesn't work for you, you're either going to quit doing it or like me, you're going to look like an NPC. It's going to be weird, you know? So I think that that's really like a good piece of advice is find out what works for you. Newsletters, obviously, every person says that. Like everybody I interview and I ask that question, they're like, my newsletter. And I think that is really important because what you're doing is building that connection. Do you do a lot of in-person events?
I try to do a couple a year, yes. So I go back east a lot. Roanoke Authors, what is it called? Roanoke. Oh, no, they changed the name of it. Anyway, go to Roanoke in April.
Okay.
And I've done books in the city. I've done a couple of different cons. A lot of times I'm in Colorado, so I was just in Wyoming a couple of weeks ago. I'm trying to do a couple local so the travel doesn't get as expensive. And yeah.
Because it does. Yeah, the travel. I mean, I did a lot of cons for a while, and that was what was killing me, was just their travel expenses. Even if you do well, you spend so much money in traveling that you're like, wow, that just broke even.
Yeah. Before COVID, like I would do 3 or 4 a year, but I would talk to indie authors mainly that would, I mean, they would do like 2 a month and they just, I mean, I think they were tired or I don't know how they were doing it, but anyway, they were like, yeah, I'm getting tons of followers, you know, adding to their newsletter, tons of people buying their books in person. Plus, then those people are like coming back to find their next books, right? So they found it really beneficial, and it's so fun to connect with readers at those live events. Yeah, there's nothing, and that's really why I started my podcast too, because it was 2020 and I wasn't seeing my author friends, and I was like, I need this. So I was like, no, if I start a podcast, then I can talk to my friends. We can pimp out our books, and it's a win-win.
Yeah, I started publishing during COVID. Now I had published years before, but then I took like a 15-year hiatus and then came back in 2021. And it was just like, wow, is that the wrong time to do that? Because I am much more an in-person person. Like I do great at in-person events. I can talk to people. I'm comfortable. Yeah, and that didn't exist. So that was it was definitely a weird time and how to figure things out for sure.
Well, the interesting thing was when I talked to authors, if you were already an established author, it seemed like you stopped writing during that time. But the people who weren't authors, who wanted to be, started writing during that
I
time.
came back to it in that time.
It's like you had to do something that you didn't normally do. So the people that were normally writing were like, no, I can't do that right now.
Yeah.
And the people that weren't writing were like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this now.
So how did you deal with that time? Because obviously you'd already been writing. You started writing, or you published first in 2015. So how did you handle that kind of time frame?
Yeah. So I think I've only published one book that year instead of or maybe it must have been two. It must have been two I published instead of my normal 3 that had been before that. And yeah, I mean, I spent obviously a lot of time with my family. My kids were like new high school age. So it was very stressful for them. And me and my husband, we totally re-landscaped our yard. So I did that.
I tried to grow a garden, didn't work out.
Yeah. No, landscaping for us involves taking out all the rocks and doing them through mesh. So all the dirt and everything cleaning them and putting them back. That was our landscaping.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So it was like this repetitive thing that was like a Zen thing. So.
Yeah. I spent a lot of money to grow like one tomato. So I was like, this didn't work. So a lot of times what I find with creatives is that they are creative in more than one way. Do you have other creative things that you do? Like, do you do music or art or cross stitch or anything else?
I have no.
Is that, yeah.
Ability. All I have is my characters who are constantly in my brain.
Yeah. So when you put a book to bed, so you're done with a series, how do you then put the characters to bed? Like, how do you finish and let them go?
It's really hard, but with my Realm Chronicles series, my poor Queen Titania, like, she had a lot of things that happened to her and her family members, and I couldn't do one more bad thing to her. So I knew that it was, it was what it needed to be. It was where I knew I wanted to end the series, as well as I didn't even want to go back to her world again, even for the next generation, because I know that even in that next generation, something horrible is going to have to happen to her family. So I'm like, no, enough has happened to this poor girl. I mean, even before the series starts, like, her 4 brothers are killed. And that's the reason, like, she's the only person left to take the crown in her kingdom. And she's the first female in her realm. And all the people think she shouldn't be there. So she has so much. So I thought, no, we're just going to leave her. But I do, like, in the finale, they have to gather 12 different kinds of fantasy beings to do this big thing. I'm not going to say what it is. But anyway, so I have all of these 12 characters now that I can kind of like spin off. And you may see Titania come back and interact with those characters. So I may be able to keep her a little bit in there, but not in a major point where we're going to see something horrible happen to her.
Right. No,
or people anymore. Right.
Now, do you make yourself cry ever when you
write? I cry. So yeah, I cry when I'm writing. And it's so hard for me to write when horrible things happen. Like, I think, yeah, a lot of my readers have emailed me and said, I'm so mad at you. And I'm mad at myself sometimes, but yes,
you're like, I understand. Yeah, I do too. Like, and then I'll say to myself, why did I do that? But it's important to the story. So you got to do it. So what's on your radar moving forward? You said you're working on your kind of perfect romance series. Do you have other things that you're in the works?
Right. So the next book will be Perfect Secrets, and that's it's with the first round of editing with my editor right now. The character's name is Elle, and she has like a major breakup, and she's starting her new life. So she moves to Denver, Colorado. And so that was fun to write about, sort of my area where I live. And so that will come out in June of 2026. And then I've started another one in that series too, that is with another character in the friend group, Danny, in Lexington, Kentucky. It goes back to Lexington. So that will be fun. I have a short story coming out in a magazine in January that's a Nyx character, which is a fish shifter, if you don't know, aren't familiar with Nyx. So that short story will come out in Arcane, the new Arcane fantasy magazine that's making its debut issue. So that will be out in January 2026. So I'm thinking about making that a longer novel, which usually happens with I usually have an idea. I write a short story for either I get an idea and then put it in a magazine or an anthology, or an anthology comes to me and I get challenged and I come up with a short story and then that person gets a novel. It's usually how it happens. So yeah, we'll see how that goes and what jumps off from there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was just actually discussing with another writer about, writing a short story versus writing a novel and what those different elements are. I have a hard time with short stories because I always want to then build it out. Like, so I can do it, but then I'm always like, okay, now I want to build this out. When you're writing a short story, in your mind, is it always potentially a novel?
I haven't started them that way, but they have turned out that way in every case for me. I do have like my short romance teaser to the Perfect Romance series that you'll download. It's just a short story, and I don't know if I'll ever make it into a novel because I'm kind of struggling to figure out how they go from there, but maybe someday. But yeah, it is challenging for me to write a short story. I did a short story in 4 Names of Fortune, which is an anthology that came out last year, which is an outtake from the Realm Chronicles series. So it shows like some of the characters that were doing things in the background that you just hear about in the main series. I show them doing it. And the people in the anthology came back to me and they're like, no, this does not work. There are too many characters. There are too many like subplot lines. It's too long. Like I thought I could stretch the word count, and they were like, we'll coach you. And that's when part of me was like, I don't need coaching. I know what I'm doing, but they really helped. Like they helped me get it down to like, okay, we have one plot line, we have one major character, and you don't need all these, distracting things that really, if you read the series, you would get. Like if you were already reading the series, you would have gotten, and you would have been fulfilled by that. And you would seeing all these different things that were happening. But if you're just coming new into a series, you would think, I don't know what's going on.
So talking to writers, a lot of times everybody has kind of like their passion. So some people love world building, some people love character development, some people like plot. I'm a character development person. I love that. What is your like passion when you start a new project?
I am more about characters. Most of my books, actually all my books have been character driven. Like first I had the idea for the character and then I built the word around them. Like I never thought I would write fairies. I did not research fairies before. And that may have been my only major regret maybe was not researching fairies before I wrote about them. But when you want to write something a little bit different, you should probably just write it a little bit different. So it turned out okay. But yeah, so like I saw an image of a fairy hunched in a meadow and I was bored. and I thought, oh, what's going on with this fairy? Like she would look scared or anxious or something. And I thought, what's going on with this fairy? And, well, maybe she has an army that's about invading her realm or her kingdom. And how is she is she the one that has to deal with this, or how is she dealing with this, and who is she? And so this whole like 5-book series came from that single image and me just asking questions about this character who I had never read fairies. I mean I read Peter Pan, but
right.
and I knew about Tuck and William Shakespeare a little bit, but never really read them very much and never thought I'd write fairies. And then I had a 5-book series about fairies.
Based on a picture. Yeah.
Right. Based on a picture.
And I love that because then people say, where's the inspiration come? I'm like, everywhere, anywhere. It's just there if you have your mind open to it. How much of you do you put into your characters?
Sometimes like in Is This Me, My Being Me series, I think the character a little bit of me, but always more brave. I always need braver characters than I am, or than I was, I would say. Wasn't very brave as a young adult, but either it's me or the antithesis of me.
Yeah.
Which, and probably it's more of that than I'm a very introverted person. always kind of more taking the safe route. And, that's not as interesting as someone who, so yeah, maybe there's touches in me, but I think as an author, it's funny. I was just doing an interview and they're saying, well, are these total, fantasy characters or total made up characters? And I'm like, well, you take personalities from everybody you meet, and one character may be like a conglomerate of 10 people that right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely can see that, because I mean, to me, they say like in dreams and writing, there's a little bit of you in everything, and sometimes the little bit of us is also a little bit of us we wish we were, or like that we wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, like, you can make the outcomes that you want as a writer, and that's that's definitely, I think, important, and relatable to other people. The more we pour, kind of like, not even ourselves directly, but ourselves in that, like that, our hopes, our dreams, our expectations into a character, then other people also can read that in that character.
Right. And I mean, that's kind of the magic of reading and writing and being an author and being in this world. Like, you get to relate to people and you get to have those shared experience with people. And, that's kind of what makes us human. That kind of what binds us together and keeps us together as a society, is those shared experiences. So that is really important to me, keeping that aspect.
Yeah, for sure. I always say, like, for me, one of the reasons I switched from nonfiction journalism to like fiction was that you connect to more people. And I really like that in fiction, is like, it does reach a lot of more people because it's more open, I guess, for them. Anybody can pick that up and connect to some element of it. And so, like, you've created a world that any stranger can find a connection to. And that's huge. But you mentioned that you're an introvert, and so am I. It's always been a challenge. And I always joke that when I first used to have to do public book signings, I was the most awkward person in the universe doing that. How do you deal with some of those issues being introverted?
Well, there is a practice element involved in it for me. Like, in my first job, I was a researcher, but then I also had to get up in front of people and report on my research. And the more I did it, the more comfortable I got with it. So it's one of those practice things for me. But if I'm at a book signing for 5-6 hours during that, you better believe that I want to go home, get some soup, turn on Netflix, and sit in the dark for at least a day, right? So it just is really, I can do it. I love doing it. I love talking to people about books and characters and everything, but I really need that downtime to recharge my battery.
Yeah. And do you do scripts? Like, you talk about practice, like, did you have scripts you kind of worked on before you would do book signings?
The first time I didn't, and I watched other authors, and I was like, okay, I need to do this. You need to like hone your like little like elevator pitch the same way you would sell any other business. How do you catch someone in 30 seconds? How much do you interact with them? How much do you pull them into your space if they're just walking by and don't even look at them? I mean, different people, and you kind of, every author, I think, does what they're comfortable with. Maybe I try to push my comfort envelope when I'm in that, just to draw people in. But if somebody's like walking by and not even looking, you're like, okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't harass them.
Don't make them uncomfortable, and you'll be uncomfortable too, right?
That is good advice. Everybody, please listen to that. Don't harass people if they're not making eye contact.
Well, and a lot of readers are introverts too. So a lot of readers just come up to their table and they're like, "Can I read the back of your book?" I'm like, "Yes, read the back of my book."
Please.
Because they want to read the back of your book too. They don't want to hear like.
Yeah, I always joke and say, "Please read the back of it," because what that says can be better than anything I can tell you right now. Like, it's just not good. I remember the first time I said, "What's your book about?" And I was like, "Duh," I just couldn't even get it out. So yeah,
there is a practice level to that. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So here's a couple first. What was your first book you ever loved?
Oh my goodness. The first book I remember ever like loving was Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz. My grandmother gave me that book, and I don't know over what time span. Maybe they were all out when I got them. They probably were, because they were really old books, right? But I read all 13 of those books and loved them all. Yeah.
So the original, like the original Wizard of Oz books.
Right. So there was like one where the Tin Man was focused on, and one, there was just like the Scarecrow and all the other characters. I don't even remember what all of them were now, but every summer, my grandparents lived in Florida, and we always visited them for 2 to 3 weeks. And there was this huge used bookstore there. And so we always got to go and pick out our books. And it was always, so yeah.
Wow, that's impressive, because those are definitely, like, I think a lot of people think of, kind of the Wizard of Oz like the movies, but they're a lot darker and a lot heavier than the movie.
Right. And I'm not sure I only remember a couple of the titles. The Tin Man must have drew me in for whatever reason. I don't remember what happened in any of the stories, really. I just remember that I just loved them and wanted to read more books like that.
That's cool. I'm going to say real quick, hello, Sean. Good to see you. And then hello, Marcus or Marks. So, and then I saw Anita up here somewhere. Let me see if I can get back up there. She said hello anyway. But hello, Anita. I'll say hi to you too. Sorry I didn't get you guys earlier. We've been kind of knee deep in the conversation, which has been great. But I'm glad everybody tuned in as well. So do you ever think that you'll write outside the genres you've been writing in?
I don't think so. I forgot to touch on my dystopia. I realized.
Ooh.
I love dystopia. That happened in 2020. So in 2019, I published a book about a worldwide pandemic, and that was eerily predictive.
Weird, yeah.
2020. So in my book, they even blamed the Chinese. So that was very weird for 2020 to come along. And the second book came out in April of 2020, and the characters don't really live in the pandemic. They are separated and they're trying to find the cure. And then they figure out a cure. And then the evil uncle takes over the country and won't share the cure with the rest of the world. So they're like trying to get the cure to share with the rest of the world. So, but I haven't gone back to that series. Like, I still have the sister who's being held captive by the evil uncle, and I need to get her back, but I just can't go back there. Like, part of me is just like, no, I just can't do it. And that's my other challenge, I guess, for the next year is that figure out a way. I know how to get the sister back, but if I can really go back there, and maybe I can't relive that time, and maybe nobody else wants to either, so maybe it's okay. Maybe give myself permission to not do that for 20 more years.
Yeah, it's crazy when you do write something and then it happens and you're like, oh, well, now is it fiction? Like,
nobody wants to read about pandemics now.
Right. I wrote a sci-fi novel like last year, anyway. And it kind of has foretold things that have happened this year. And it's kind of the same way initially. I was like, I'm going to do a follow-up. And now I'm kind of like, I don't know if I want to go back there. I just don't know if I'm ready to kind of handle that again. And I think that's fair because, life may change. And in 10 years, all of a sudden, it'll make sense, right? And you'll rescue her. So,
Right, yeah.
She'll be like 10 years older, but, it'll be good.
Oh, that's a long time to leave her with the evil uncle. I have to tell you, that would be, Yeah,
that would be bad. That's cool, though. I love dystopian. So, yeah. So what did draw you, though, say, towards fantasy? Was just your own love of fantasy, or do you just felt like naturally inclined to write that style?
I guess I'm just drawn to fantasy. I don't really like living in the real world much of the time. I mean,
that's fair.
My romances are in the real world, but they're still not magical characters. They're still normal characters, but I don't know. They have happily ever afters, which doesn't always happen. I mean, most of the time probably happens in real life for most people. But anyway, I don't know. I guess fantasy is just that love of maybe immortality, maybe, the magical side of you can get out of anything. And
so you can do almost anything, right? It's
like the land where nobody really dies. And so all of those things probably draw me to that.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't really read a lot of fantasy, but I totally can get that because it is something that has like no boundaries. You can kind of create whatever. And that's pretty amazing.
So my family laughed at me because the other thing I did in 2020 was watch like the whole Vampire Diaries series probably like 5 times over. So that happened.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like, I like watching stuff like that because it does allow my brain to escape. So even though I don't write it, I love to watch it because then I get to go escape somewhere else. And especially in these times, that's a good thing, having that escape. So, we're about to wrap up here. It has been really great talking to you. If you can, again, let everybody know what your website is, if you have any upcoming events or things that you'd like people to know about.
Right. So my website is triciacopeland.com. triciacopland.com, TRICIACOPELAND. And you can go there and get 2 free short stories if you sign up for a newsletter, a fantasy, as well as a romance. So whichever you like, you can get on those. And I also host a podcast, Finding the Magic Book podcast. So that is like completely focused on authors and their books. So I don't talk about writing or publishing or anything. That it's only learning like what's inside their book. So it's usually like 15 to 20 minutes. So easy to check out on YouTube or your favorite podcast channel when you're going to work or whatever you're doing, taking a walk. And I think, Tricia Copeland, author, author Tricia Copeland on most of the social media.
And do you have any upcoming events?
I do. So authors rock Roanoke, or Roanoke author.
It sounds really nice.
So go to Facebook. That's in April. I will be there, and I am hoping to be at the South Dakota Book Festival next year too. So that is in the works in September.
South Dakota, okay. Yeah. So you said you're in Colorado, is that right?
I am in Colorado, yes.
I didn't know South Dakota had a book festival. I used to live out in northwest Nebraska, so I was very close to South Dakota. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty
where in South Dakota is that?
I think it's on the eastern side. I haven't even really checked it out.
Okay. Well, look it up. South Dakota. It won't be hard to find. I'm sure South Dakota book.
Right.
Well, it's been really cool talking to you, and it sounds like you've done some really great work. 23 books is impressive. So yeah, you give yourself a pat on the back for that. That's
you.
Really cool.
Thank you, Juliet. This is so much fun talking to you.
Yeah, this has been a great chat. And you're always welcome back at any time. So yeah. And then everybody that tuned in tonight, thank you so much for listening in and giving us a chance tonight. And don't forget, it's always time for Go Indie Now. And I'm going to send the video.